See, alright, so first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yehovah, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakakodash. We say, double as apostle, Elos Agreements, and Rubal, our teachers, our apostles in the truth, and we say salutations, solely acting, so they push you with no truth and sincerity. Day in and day out, and constantly in season on season, we say Shalom. Once again, going into a video here, and just touching upon some news, right? Because what went on today. This a brief explanation about today, where there's a lot of stuff that was actually happening. Hey, right now, if you blink, right, if you blink too long, you're going to miss a bunch of stuff. Even for me, it's someone that's constantly in the news, right, constantly watching and actually paying attention to so many things. Sometimes you even miss. There's so much of things coming out, so much of things that flood in your timeline that you might miss one or two, and so those one or two is something very important. Like, for example, this one here, we see food prices up to 33% as Americans battle highest grocery price spike in 50 years. This was something that I missed because it was a day ago, right? But it actually only popped back up when this person here reshared it, right? Now, obviously, if you subscribe to the New York Post and so forth, you would see it. But again, there's so much of news coming out. But one of the things I actually want to touch upon tonight is that earlier today, Trump and them had the meetings. They had the meetings, the interviews, and so forth and so on. And after he done, he said that he would strike Iran, right? Something that actually happened earlier today as well is that the market, the stock market, the markets all over the world, it started to crash. There's a bunch of news where I believe it's South Korea, where those people that deal with the markets, even young, even below the ages of 25, they started to off themselves because of the market crash. It's totally crashed right now, right? And you're going to see a lot more of that happening soon. The scriptures talk about scriptures talk about the perilous times, and the evil days, and you actually see these things coming out, high food prices, we should introduce like famines. A man he wouldn't have the money, to with the famines, right? A man he wouldn't have money to buy certain things. So what it is you feel you're going to do? You are running somebody home. Second Ezra 15 verse 16, those two chapters come to mind. Now, as I said, just touching upon this particular news here, matter of fact, let me bring a scripture before I actually read that, because I want to go to the book of Psalm chapter 55 verse Psalms 55 verse 20. You see, he had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Remember that, because it's one of the things that they actually saw today. Is Trump last night was actually talking about peace plans, and the reason why he didn't attack Iran over the weekend is because he wanted to go through negotiations and so forth. The continuous trend that he's doing, right? But every time he said that, he always attacked. Just for example, just as you seen on the screen, right? So that was the scripture say, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. And that is the man that he dealing with. His blessing is what he sword. So what you feel it is he going and do, right? They were giving the power to what? To take peace from the earth, right? And it's seen that there's no peace to come from the wicked, right? And this is the things you're seeing, right? With the stock market, as I mentioned before, what Trump would have done. What he would have done is actually so if the stock market closes on a Friday, right, and opens back on a Sunday, he would not attack until after the stock market is closed, so it wouldn't shock the market and cause certain things. But what actually happened today is that no matter the kind of deception that they tried to use, the market still went down. It went red, right? So there's nothing to hide no more. The truth about how inflation, the hyperinflation, and these other things is coming out, right? They try to hide it for months. Now it's basically coming to the forefront, right? And again, it could go, there's a bunch of news about it right now with different countries as well. Different countries as well, their stock markets is actually crash or crashing as we speak, right? So going back to the scripture, they say the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Yeah, that's why every single time you're seeing, let me read it here on the screen. It said, just in U.S. prepares plan for a military campaign against Iran that could last up to 2 weeks. But I thought they said that they don't want war. I thought Trump said that he's trying to negotiate a peace plan and all this sort of bullshit. Hey, it's Esau Edom, he didn't know it. These are the things that they were created to do, right? So that way it's even though the words is more smoother than butter, yeah, the way when they hear them speak, they really sound like they don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. And the way Trump, Hegseth, and all these other Edomites, the way how they be speaking on TV, it's like they really don't want war. But the scriptures say about war was in his heart. Yeah, that is where it is. War was in his heart. This is what they really want, right? So reading the other article, it says Israel says the U.S. is preparing for something bigger than anything we have seen before. In the war on Iran, a senior Israeli security official tells Channel 15. The official adds the U.S. is preparing for a large-scale, unprecedented operation against Iran, not just a single isolated response, with Israeli defense circles saying the U.S. is approaching a major counter response. Right? Now let me go to some other news here. But I'm going to finish up with Psalms 55:21. It says, his words were softened on oil, yet were they drawn swords. Yet were they what? Drawn swords. Right? The thing about it is this. A lot of people, they don't want this war to happen, but they can't get away from prophecy. The scriptures tell us, the signs of the end and what to look out for. And war was mentioned, famines was mentioned, pestilence, all right, earthquakes. There's something that's actually, if you actually go and look amongst countries right now is having, earthquakes on a major scale, you will be shocked. A lot of people would be shocked. They would really, they might say to think the earth is falling apart, the amount of earthquakes it's having right now, But again, these signs of the end, right? They say Trump says the U.S. is going to carry out a very, very hard round of fresh strikes against Iran to beat the fucking shit out of them, stronger than before, because now it's our turn and they know it's coming. But they are the ones who started it, They say this comes directly after Israeli Netanyahu met with U.S. Defense Security Hegseth, and Scripture City. What? The least of the flock shall what? Draw them out, So this is some videos. Now let me come out here. Let me go here. Right, and I'm gonna go down here. You see, U.S. completes heavy wave of air strikes against Iran in response to surprising attack on American forces yesterday. President Trump holds meeting with Saudi Arabia's Minister of Defense. Right, you see, so you see in where is the video? Let me see this now. Right, and as we speak, Ukraine and Russia is actually, they're going at it as well. They say Ukraine continues its strikes on wild berries logistics centers. Yesterday, a warehouse was struck and heavily damaged in Ryazan. right? I'm gonna go down a little bit. Following U.S. strikes in the vicinity of Qasem Island, smoke can be seen rising from the area, right? So they're just going into the news about the strikes that was happening, right? But also in the midst of that, Russia also attacked Ukraine, and then Ukraine actually responded to, yeah, again, the signs of the end. The end is being made manifest. So you see, Book of Sirach, chapter 39, verse 1, it says, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation of, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecies. And again, this is how you're supposed to be right now. Occupied in the prophecies. You're continuing to watch. The scripture tells us to watch, to watch. You see, earlier this month, President Trump said in an interview, know who the boss is, right? Skip that a little bit. Right, this was 30 minutes ago. So this this little rat here having he interview right now as he speak, and if anything come out right now, we would see what wait. So hold on. All right. Right, so this is it's the times of Ukraine. Only ruins remain of the buildings. Right, local media reports that 5 people have died, including children. So you see, tensions on the rise, wars and rumors of wars, and the scripture said to be what? And to be occupied in prophecies, and that's how it's supposed to be right now. There's a lot of things happening as we speak, and I need to be on the watch. You understand? This is the book of 2 Ezra, chapter 9, verse 5. You see, for like us all that is made in the world had a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. Right? So the end is manifest. It's being made clear and evident. We're in the end of times. Right? It's if even so the times also of the highest have plain beginnings and wonder and powerful works, and endings in effects and signs. So and endings in what? Effects and signs. And the signs is right in front of you. Right? There are a lot of unbelievers that obviously they would die in their unbelief, but they don't believe in the end of times. But again, the signs are there. Right? The signs are there. Watch how much news. This is the reason why I scrolling on like this. It's just to show how much news is coming out in the span of like this. We on the 3rd hour now, right? They're scrolling on 3 hours. There's a bunch of news coming out. Then when it go up to what? 8 minutes. A lot of stuff is happening right now, man. And in the midst of this, something you have to pay attention to. They're talking about the changing of the technology, right? Which is going on the part of what the MOTB, right? So yeah, again, be occupied in prophecies. So with that, once again, I give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yoshai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. We say that when it's apostle and elders of great Muslim rule, whatever teachers or apostles you should. And we see salutations so the Akim say the push with no truth and sincerity. Day in and day out and constantly in season, we say Shalom.